coming up.
And as you are aware, this bill is quite controversial, as it was clear the NDP and Liberals negotiated a deal to move the election date back to protect the pensions of likely to be defeated NDP and Liberal MPs in guaranteeing their pension.
There are changes in the bill with respect to special ballots.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
We have Mr. Perrault and Mr. Sampson.
A number of other witnesses that are with us. With that, we will transition into our line of questioning. And Mr. Duncan, the floor will be yours for 6 minutes to start us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here this morning. Recently, the committee received a written response from the Privy Council office outlining two meetings earlier this year, January 25th and March 30th, at which, quote, NDP political party representatives were present to get secret briefings by the Prime Minister's Office and Elections Canada in information to craft this bill. Mr. Perrault, you attended both of those meetings, and as you are aware, this bill is quite controversial, as it was clear the NDP and Liberals negotiated a deal to move the election date back to protect the pensions of likely to be defeated NDP and Liberal MPs in guaranteeing their pension. We know that these two meetings that you had, you were at, and Elections Canada staff. Can you confirm to the committee if you or any Elections Canada staff had any other meetings, briefings, calls, or exchanges with the NDP present or participating in regarding Bill C-65 before it was announced?
There's many elements to your question, Mr. Chair. As is customary, before a bill is introduced, at the very last steps in the preparation of a bill, the Privy Council office typically shares with my office a copy of the bill to make sure there are no errors or technical issues. This is not a policy discussion. I have had policy discussions with representatives of all parties, both prior and after the bill was introduced.
I got to clarify here, because when you go through, there's a thing between a standard meeting policy information that PROC deals with. When it comes to crafting Bill C-65, the NDP had special access that other parties were not provided to, given information specifically in crafting Bill C-65. So, Mr. Perrault, my question was, were there any other meetings besides January 25th or March 30th that you met with or provided information to in any way anyone from the NDP in advance of the bill being announced? Not meetings on general policy or anything, specifically on Bill C-65 and it being crafted.
Several meetings on the supply confidence agreement, which had elements, the 3-day, 2 additional days of voting. I've had meetings with Mr. Blakey then. I've had meetings with Ms. Matheson, with Madame Gaudreau, with yourself after the bill was introduced, with Mr. Cooper.
So this is
with Mr. Cooper, both prior and after.
And again, you are conflating two different things, Mr. Perrault. There is about having
colleagues.
meetings.
Eric, sorry, just 1 sec. Colleagues, I understand. I get it. But listen, we just spent the last meeting losing an hour of witness testimony. I don't want that to happen again. Mr. Duncan, go ahead.
Mr. Perrault, you are conflating two different things again. If there's information on policy on reports that you provided to this committee, I can tell you, you did not meet with Conservative Party representatives about drafting Bill C-65. This was the thing. I've asked specifically, you've acknowledged now that you met with Mr. Blakey specifically on crafting Bill C-65. I'm asking you to table with the committee the dates, the times, and who attended from the NDP on any briefings and information, not about general policy matters, specifically to the question about
sorry,
crafting.
Mr. Duncan, I have a point of order I have to attend to. Mr. Gerritsen?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Duncan is misrepresenting what the witness said. And I think it is incumbent upon you in your position as chair to ensure that witnesses are treated in a fair manner and that when they say something, they're not immediately subject to members around this table from misrepresenting their words in order to misrepresent and then immediately use them back on that witness. I would encourage you to ask our colleagues across the way to be more judicious in their approach to witnesses in this committee.
I appreciate the encouragement, Mr. Gerritsen. I will let Mr. Duncan finish, provide Mr. Perrault the opportunity to defend his view and his statement should he feel that's necessary, and hopefully that will get us to where we need to be. Mr. Duncan, you've got about 2.5 minutes here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to repeat the question again that I've asked a couple of times here. Can you confirm to the committee and provide in writing if you or any Elections Canada staff had any other meetings besides January 25th and March 30th about meetings, briefings, calls, or exchanges with the NDP present regarding the drafting and considerations of Bill C-65 before it was announced? Not general meetings on policy and afterwards, the standard meetings that I've had meetings with Ms. Perot afterwards and on different topics, specifically on Bill C-65 with the NDP before it was announced.
So, Mr. Chair, just to be clear, I did not know what would be in Bill C-65, and I did not participate in meetings regarding the entire bill. I had discussions on elements of the supply and confidence agreement, as well as on my recommendations that I made in 2022 to Parliament. I was very deliberate in making sure that whenever I met members from one side, I met with members from all other sides to convey the very same message. Any topic that I addressed with one side, I addressed with the other, prior or after. And I'll give you an example. There was one item that was neither in my recommendations nor in the bill, or nor in the supply and confidence agreement, and I asked the government to consider addressing deep fakes. And after I made those representations, I spoke to members.
Mr. I'm going to ask again
I spoke to members of
Mr. Dunn,
all
let's just let him
parties
finish here.
to repeat. So every time I met with one side, I conveyed the same messages to all sides. With respect to the bill, before it was tabled, I did not have a complete view of the bill. I did not participate in the drafting of a bill. I did participate in discussions on specific policy areas.
Of the bill before C-65 was announced, to which the NDP was present at the announcement with Minister LeBlanc. They had access to information and briefings, including ones that you were at when it comes to this. The Privy Council office gave the two details of January 25th, 2024 and March 30th. Would you provide the names of all of the NDP MPs that you met with, specifically those two meetings and any others? And whenever we have the word, quote, NDP political party representatives, would you provide the names of who those individuals were then?
I will certainly do that to the best of my ability, and I will include also all meetings that I had with all members of this committee on the same topic.
Thank you to our witnesses for coming forward. Unfortunately, you're being subject to an ongoing line of conspiracy theory by Mr. Duncan. My only question for you would be, and you kind of preface it by saying you would provide of all, you said of all members of this committee. Mr. Duncan has asked you to provide NDP members specifically. I would ask that you provide all members that you've met with, even outside of this committee.
I will do that.
I'll turn to Mr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Perot, we did indeed meet on February 20th, 2024. It was billed as a courtesy meeting. We discussed the departmental plan, your report on the 2019 and 2021 election, and discussions about PROC conducting hearings on that report for you to come and appear before the committee, the Nunavut pilot project, as well as three-day voting, which had been in the news, or there have been media reports about this idea of a three-day election day and discussions between the NDP and the Liberals pursuant to the SACA agreement. I just want to clarify that there were no representatives from the PMO at that meeting, were there?
There was none.
And no one from the Minister's office?
There was none.
And no one from the PCO?
None. This is a meeting that I invited you to so that I can convey to you this very same concerns I have.
The very things that I just relayed, and there were no representatives from the Conservative Party of Canada present?
No.
No. And there were representatives from the PMO, the PCO, the Minister's office, and the NDP when you had a meeting on January 25th, 2024, correct?
Correct. And
okay, thank you very much for that. Sounds like a very different meeting. Now, on to another matter. There are changes in the bill with respect to special ballots. Presently, when someone takes out a special ballot, they must write in the name of the candidate. This bill changes that so that if someone were to fill in Conservative Party of Canada, they could simply mark in their party preference, not the name of the candidate. So I just want to understand the implications of that in this hypothetical. Say that there was a candidate who was running and they, for whatever reason, withdrew before the deadline, the cutoff, and another candidate replaced them, and someone voted on day one of the writ, and they marked in Conservative Party of Canada, and the candidate who was standing for the Conservative Party at that date was different than the candidate who ultimately made the final ballot. How would that vote be treated?
The vote would be treated such that the intent of that person is to vote for the candidate that is the representative of the Conservative Party in your example, as it stands at the close of nominations. And so if there was a shift prior to the close of nominations, then the list of candidates in party affiliation is crystallized at the close of nominations.
So I guess, just to clarify, would the vote count or not?
If it only mentioned the party,
right,
it would count.
And if
it mentioned the party in the name of a candidate who is not a candidate of the party, then the intent of the elector could not be understood and it would not count.
And right now, if someone were to vote by way of special ballot and they marked in candidate A, because they'd be required to specifically write in the name of the candidate, and then candidate A was not the candidate that made the final ballot because someone else stepped in and they met the filing deadline, that vote would not count. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, on another matter, we've seen this in a few by-elections, this protest movement that you've alluded to, in which there have been 50 candidates on the ballot in Winnipeg and Montreal and in Toronto. You've proposed some potential amendments to the Act. I welcome those suggestions. I would note as well that I think in each of the three ridings, the same official agent represented all of the candidates. What are your thoughts on potentially making an amendment so that an official agent could only act for one candidate in a riding?
Mr. Chair, that's something that I've considered. And now these are all nil returns for all of these candidates affiliated with that movement. And so it is such a small task to sign a nil return that I think it could easily be done with different official agents. And I'm not sure what the policy rationale would be. In the case of the signature, there is a policy rationale for electors supporting the nomination of a particular candidate, not any person in the world who wants to be a candidate. And so I think that allowing a person to, putting on the table a series of 75 nomination papers and allowing people to sign in string does not conform to the idea behind candidate signatures, and I think that's why this is the measure that I propose. I mean, in the last 4 by-elections, I've had to adapt the prescriptions of the Act to accommodate the number of candidates. That means that I'm setting aside the will of Parliament, and I do not do that lightly. Parliament has designed the ballot in a certain way, and there can be conversation as to whether this is the right way in debates and amendments. But for me to set it aside is a significant gesture, and I do not do that lightly. But there is no other way of allowing so many candidates. I do think that that's an issue.